Hey, welcome everyone. Welcome to a really exciting night of Original Sports Podcast. This evening, I'm very honored to have our guest tonight. I actually had the fortunate advantage of meeting him at Pirate Fest. My son rode up on him to take a picture, get an autograph, and I slid my business card in his hand, and he was just such a gracious person. Look, if anybody's going to know what's going on in that clubhouse, this guy has his finger on the pulse of the Pittsburgh Pirates. It's a longtime play-by-play guy, Greg Brown. He's been with the Buccos for 31 years. He's seen some good fortune. He's seen some bad fortune happen with this team. But he's going to give us a peek into the 2025 season. He's down at Bradenton right now, enjoying the beautiful weather and watching those young Buccos I guess get themselves whipped into shape by Coach Shelton and the other coaches out there, and probably some old Buccos too. So kick back, relax, grab yourself an Iron City, and let's do this thing.
National Streaming Sports is brought to you in part by BetUs.com, designed for true fans. NFL odds, Week 1 and futures, college football odds, including Heisman Trophy favorites and playoff odds, NBA odds of division winners and playoffs, Major League Baseball playoff and World Series odds, the National Hockey League Conference playoffs and Stanley Cup odds, and boxing wagers. Betting opportunities include versus the spreads and outright winners, also during the game. Use our link on our website, nessp.info, the Bet Us Opportunities webpage, for a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits. Must be 21 years old, and remember, bet responsibly.
You're going to call anyone that loves you. You're going to ask them if you can use their card to buy concert tickets because your card's maxed out. Okay. If they say yes, you get the tickets.
I can't call my parents because they already think I make bad financial decisions. Well, so I think I'll call one of my friends.
Okay.
I'm a little nervous. I feel tingly.
What's your not answer?
Giovanna?
Yes.
I was on SeatGeek earlier and I saw 2 tickets for Olivia Rodrigo at a really good price. So
Oh my god.
I maxed my credit card out by accident last week. Do you think I could use yours to buy the tickets?
Oh my god, yes.
Did I what?
Yeah, you got the tickets. You got the tickets.
I just want tickets. We're going to go to the concert together. Giovanna, I'll call you later. Love you. Thanks for picking up. Oh my god. I'm going to see Olivia Rodrigo.
Yes, thank you, SeatGeek.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls around the world, it's time to experience the O's on the Original Sports Podcast.
Hey, welcome again, everybody. It's our honor and pleasure to have with us the Pittsburgh Pirates play-by-play announcer, Greg Brown. Greg, how are you this evening?
I'm really good now that we've got not only the barber, but the dream and tea sizzle. So that has made my day.
How's the weather down there?
Today was better. Yesterday was rain out. It rained all day. Today was sunny and cool, relatively speaking. I think it got maybe into 68, 69 degrees or so. But yeah, no complaints down here, man. It's
Greg, just don't go to the Keys. I saw they had 9 inches of rain.
Oh, no kidding! Wow,
flooding and everything. Yeah,
outside of the state.
Yeah.
Hey, Greg, let me ask you a question. This team spent $17 million around there this offseason. Did they address their needs? I love the latest pickup. I'll be honest with you. This Andrew Haney is a diamond in the rough for that team. But what do you think about some of the other acquisitions?
Well, in answer to the question, Barber, I think if you would ask any fan or member of every baseball's organization, maybe aside from the Dodgers, I think just about every fan and member of that organization, being honest, would say we would love to have addressed this need or that need. We did what we could. They would also, maybe even the Dodgers, even though they spent another exorbitant amount of money this offseason. Yeah. So that's a question that you only can answer at the end of the year, and if you're taking home a World Series trophy,
Wow.
that's when you can say we did what we needed to do. Other than that, there's no answer to that. I think they did address the starting rotation because there was a lot of talk about trying to add a bat, which I understand. But for me, there was a lot of discussion and positive talk about the rotation and how good it was before Heaney. And I was leery of that because I felt like it's pretty good, but you're relying now, last year, Jared Jones burst onto the scene right on opening day out of spring training. And I mean, burst onto the scene. A lot of us didn't really have him on our radar. And then, of course, Skenes came up in early May. So you had Keller, you had Falter in spring training with a flip of the coin. He turned out to be well above average, this left-hander. But many were thinking that, boy, Bubba Chandler will be this year's Jared Jones. So it'll be Skenes, Keller, Jared Jones, Bailey Falter, and now they have this young flamethrower, Bubba Chandler. In my mind, I felt like that's not the sign of a really good rotation, strong team, because you don't get that fortunate back-to-back years. I'm not saying that Bubba Chandler won't eventually be a guy like Jones or better, or like Skenes, but right now he's 22 years old. They're a better team at the big league level if Bubba Chandler is part of a rotation at AAA Indianapolis and honing his skills and getting ready should someone falter at the big league level or injuries crop up. So that was a critical sign for me. That was a really strong sign by the Pirates to get the lefty Andrew Heaney. He's got major league experience. He's had success. He's a left-hander. And one thing I do like about Ben Cherington, and I think that Neil Huntington addressed it to a degree when he was the GM. He brought in Francisco Liriano, a lefty. But I've always felt like the Pirates never played to that strength of PNC Park from their pitcher standpoint. They kind of dismissed it. They said, I don't care if they're lefty or righty as long as they get guys out. That bunk, that old cliche stuff. No, PNC Park's made for left-handed starting pitching. And Cherington's done a real nice job with that in his 5 going on 6 years. And I think the Heaney sign is a real good one.
So with that being said, would you say that Heaney was the biggest offseason acquisition, or would you go another route?
I mean, probably in terms of free agent acquisition, that they really didn't do much. That Caleb Ferguson is an under the radar lefty that I really like. What's not getting a lot of attention right now, and that's a good thing because it got a lot of attention last year when they signed Aroldis Chapman to a $10.5 million contract, and I said then, and I'll say it now, he did a nice job, but for the Pittsburgh Pirates to sign a one-inning setup man to $10.5 million made no sense to me. But that was what they decided to do. And, he did a nice job, but the first half of the season, you look at the numbers, how many guys that guy walked. The bullpen was just a disaster last year. And there was so much talk about when they added Chapman, as a setup man for Bednar and what that might do with Holderman and Ryan Baracchi, the lefty who had been so good the year before. And they're setting themselves up for a really strong bullpen. And all these teams do this. It's the most volatile position in baseball, the bullpen, for every team. You never know what you're going to get from one year to the next. But I like the fact that they just didn't sit on last year's pen. They made some changes. They bring in the lefty Ferguson. They got another veteran lefty in Tim Meza, big league experience. And you add that to a healthy Bednar. Bednar looks good, determined, slimmed down a bit. Colin Holderman, Kyle Nicholas, Carmen Majinski, Dennis Santana. When you look at his numbers, Santana's got a lot of big league experience. The Pirates picked him up last year, and he was tremendous. So I think that bullpen is going to be a huge strength this year. And in terms of the one free agent sign, the biggest name, if you want to call it that, is Heaney. But again, under the radar, I'm going to go with Caleb Ferguson.
So we were looking at Spencer Horwitz. They picked him up with a trade with three-team deal, and he comes with a nagging wrist injury. Why do you think Harrington made that acquisition? Do to I understand help out the first base situation, but why do you think he made that deal, give up so much with Ortiz then?
Well, I mean, he going back to the question about addressing a need, that was an obvious void there at first base. They wanted to do that, and he felt like the best way to do it, because he couldn't spend, I don't know, more than, I don't know what the budget was, but not they can't get those big time free. A Paul Goldschmidt comes to mind, for example. I guess they felt like they didn't want to spend that much money on a Goldschmidt. They have familiarity with the Blue Jays, this group, with Charrington and Shelton and Steve Sanders, the assistant GM. They spent some time with Toronto. So you'll notice they've made a lot of deals over the last few years with Toronto specifically because they know these players. And they like Horowitz. He's an on-base guy, maybe not a big home run hitter, but a doubles guy, going to drive in runs, outstanding defensively at first base. And that old cliche that you've got to give up something to get something. And yeah, Ortiz was really good. You could argue that he was the most consistent pitcher from start to finish. And I say that including Skenes, because Skenes didn't come in until May, about the second week in May. But from the start of the season to the end of the season, Ortiz incredibly reliable, ended up being a fixture in that rotation. They obviously believe that Horowitz can fill that void. It's kind of been a Bermuda Triangle for the Pirates over the years, getting a first baseman who could be situated there for a number of years. Horowitz is controllable. That's a big deal in baseball these days. I have a couple of pretty close friends in the Blue Jays organization, and I asked them after the acquisition to give me the real lowdown on Horowitz. One guy said didn't see him hitting a lot of home runs, but kind of what I said, gap guy, RBI guy, clutch guy. Another friend of mine who's pretty high up in the baseball development department said he can just plain hit. And I like that from a scouting perspective from another guy, another organization, the organization from which he came. He can just plain hit. And the Pirates can use hitters. They need guys, maybe not home run hitters, because those guys are expensive, but guys that are going to hand that baton off and get it down the line from one guy to the next, not strike out every time up, especially caught looking. It drives me nuts. The way the teams like the Pirates, low revenue clubs are going to win, especially the Pirates makeup right now, strong starting pitching, get that bullpen, and run the bases, do the fundamentals and defense. And that's how they're set up right now.
Who's going to replace Horwitz till he comes back? Well, I mean, like, the anticipation is what, May?
Well, I've heard different things. Initially, when I first heard it about a month ago, I heard maybe mid-April. And so, these teams never, including the Pirates, they never want to come out and say mid-April just in case it ends up being late April or early May. But I think internally, optimistically, I think that's what they're thinking, though they won't say that publicly. In terms of who replaces him now, options are some guys that are in camp as non-roster invitees. DJ Stewart, who has big league time, last couple of years with the Mets. Big left-handed hitter who hasn't played much first base, but said he's willing to play. He's more of an outfielder DH. They also have Derek Hall, who was with the Phillies organization for the last handful of years, who put up really good numbers at AAA, and obviously has been blocked over the years by Rhys Hoskins, now Bryce Harper. Adam Frazier has played some first base. Jared Triolo, outstanding defensively at first base. They have some options. I don't know if they're great options, but not bad, especially if a guy like, if today, if you pressed me and said, who's going to end up being the starting first baseman on opening day, I might say Derek Hall. The one thing about guys, and you guys know this, and I keep impressing upon our listeners and viewers, we've done a couple of games in spring training, and I have to remind myself of this every spring. We get caught up in all the numbers. We get caught up in the guys when they start doing well, or poorly for that matter. But when we look at the roster, the 26-man roster, the 13 pitchers, the 13 position players, almost 90% of the time, that's a rough estimate, these are guys that when they come to camp, they are on the 40-man roster. It is really hard for a non-roster invitee to come into spring training and win a job, especially teams that pride themselves, like the Pirates, on the talent that either they've developed or the roster makeup that they've put together over an off season. They spend so much time poring over numbers and looking. These are the 40 men that these are our guys. And now spring training comes along and you've really got to fight to trade this non-roster invitee. Who are we going to take off this roster? We love these 40 guys. Who are we going to take off and expose them to waivers? So it's still maybe perhaps a long shot for a guy like Derek Hall. But again, if you pressed me, who's going to be the opening day starter in Miami? If it's a right-handed pitcher, I assume it would be for the Marlins. It's going to be a left-handed hitting first baseman with power, with pop. That's Derek Hall.
Interesting.
Okay. So recently we signed a 37-year-old journeyman. What is that? Tony Pham.
Tommy Pham.
Tommy Pham. Why? I mean, he has a history, and it's not so favorable. But I mean, what do you think about him?
Interesting is a great description for the sign, much like you might say Adam Frazier, because Frazier's numbers aren't great. The one thing that I had heard Frazier's name this winter from somebody who was in the know. They said that they were in discussions with Frazier, and because I've known Adam, from his days with the Pirates, and I love Adam Frazier. But I said to this person, Adam Frazier, what do the Pirates need with Adam Frazier? And he said, since he left the Pirates, he has become very vocal and very much a team leader. We talk to the people in Baltimore and Kansas City, and it is something that the Pirates have been sorely lacking, leadership. Now, what comes first, leadership or numbers? I'll take the numbers. I'll take a guy that hits 30 homers and drives in 120 runs and does it quietly without being a leader. That's fine with me. But they do need somebody to take charge. Andrew McCutchen's been around a long time. Andrew McCutchen doesn't say anything. He's just quiet. Brian Reynolds, same thing, just quiet. Key Brian Hayes, just quiet. He's been here a handful of years now, quiet. They don't have anyone. Now Paul Skenes, even though was a rookie last year, he watched his P's and Q's. He kind of did the rookie thing where you're seen and not heard. That's old school, but he's very old school. He's an old soul, even though he's only 22 years old. He knew his place, but I think he was doing that just because that's the way it's supposed to be. Now you can see some times over at Pirate City, the minor league complex, and now at the big league complex at the Lecom Park, there are other younger pitchers kind of following him, almost little ducklings. He's the mama duck, and then little ducklings following it, almost doing the exact same thing he does. It's kind of comical to watch, but he did that this winter. He took some of the young guys and they worked out together. They went to the same workout facility, and he's got an incredible work ethic. So I think Skenes will take care of the pitching side, but they have needed someone to take care of the position players. And now they brought in two vocal leaders. Adam Frazier is one from an infielder standpoint, and now Tommy Pham is the outfielder. And his reputation has preceded him. Dream, you're right. It's not a good one, but the one thing you cannot deny about Tommy Pham, I've heard this from everybody, all he cares about, maybe to a fault, which is a good fault for me, is winning. And the Pirates have not had winning at the top of their to-do list for too long. And so if Tommy Pham goes in there and disrupts things and makes things very uncomfortable for people in that clubhouse, for me, I'm fine with it. If it means they're going to win more ball games. I heard Adam Wainwright on a podcast. I don't know if it was this offseason or last, but someone sent it to me after the Pirates signed Tommy Pham. And he went on for about 5 minutes to tell a story. The host asked him about Pham. He said, I'll tell you about Tommy Pham. When we were with the Cardinals, when he was with the Cardinals as a young player, and I think he said in his very first year with St. Louis, he said, we lost a tough game and we're all in the clubhouse and we're hanging around our lockers. It was a bad loss. And here's this kid who walks in, relatively inexperienced outfielder, Tommy Pham. And all of a sudden, he closes the clubhouse doors and he starts yelling at these players. And he starts going around to each locker and he goes, you're lazy. You play too many video games. You're fat. This is the veteran pitcher, Adam Wainwright, telling the story. He says he's looking at Yadier Molina, his veteran catcher, next to him. They're like stunned, like, who is this guy doing this? They kind of whisper, should we stop him? And they both said, actually, no, because everything he said was spot on. He was like calling each guy out. And I like that. I don't know how it's going to end up. It may be a complete disaster. If they're losing and he's not playing well or he's not playing enough, I don't know what kind of guy he is. He's not got a good reputation, but
you think that's why they brought him in, Greg?
You
think they brought him in?
I do that. Yeah, I think that was the main reason. I think they think he can still play. I think he's going to play a lot of left.
Oh, I definitely think he can still play.
Yeah, I mean, his numbers haven't been great the last couple of years, but he's got an over 800 OPS lifetime against lefties. So I could see a platoon with him and like a Joshua Palacios, a left-handed batter, or if Jack Sawinski finds it again, I could see a platoon. He's going to play left, or they are going to play left. Reynolds is going to play right field this year. That was the game plan last season. It didn't work out for whatever reason, but he's going to go in there and play right field now every day, which is better on the legs. There's not much room to cover in right. You got O'Neill Cruz in center. But anyway, the Tommy Pham thing is really interesting. This season is interesting for a number of reasons. That's just one of them. I'm so curious to see how these personalities work out and what a guy like Tommy Pham does for this team. Jim Leland said to me many years ago, I was in the Pirate front office before I became a broadcaster, and I got to know Jim when he was a rookie manager. And after a couple of years, I was talking to him one time. I said, Jim, it would really be neat if we had a bunch of kind of blue collar guys on this team. Win or lose, Pittsburgh loves blue collar guys. And they'll come out to the ballpark if we have 25 men that just are grinders and, again, work ethic. And he goes, that is blankety blank blank, Greg Brown. That's a bunch of BS. He said, you give me 25 jerks, and he used a different word. Give me 25 jerks who can play, and I'll teach them PR in the off season. And that's what I'm thinking about with Tommy Pham.
I'm thinking about Barry Bonds right there you described.
Boy, that's exactly right. You're 100%. He was spot on. That was even before Bonds' arrival, but yeah, that's who he's talking about.
Greg, I saw the clip again today. Somebody posted the clip on X of Leland getting into Bonds at spring training several years ago. And I put it in my group on Facebook, my Original Sports Podcast group, because it is a classic. I mean, I love those coaches. That was Cowher. That was Leland. I mean, that's Pittsburgh to me, though. Like that's a Pittsburgh thing.
Oh yeah, and he really endeared himself to Pittsburgh. It wasn't intentional. Happened to be a cameraman for a local TV station that was shooting. It was the only camera, and so it's not like it was done. In this day and age, almost anything these guys do in any sport, to be quite honest with you, it's hard to determine whether they're just playing to the cameras or not. Yeah. But back then, they weren't covering the team every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and there weren't cameras all over the place. This camera just happened to heard a little skirmish out there in left field. It was in the minor league complex. It was even before the Pirates started playing big league games. Yep. At then McKechnie Field, and Leland laid into to Bonds, and Bonds gained a great respect for Leland that day, and to this day they remain close friends. And there's no reason why that can't happen. This is for a different type of podcast, not sports, but it's societal. Where have those days gone when someone could rip the living daylights out of you and scream bloody murder and embarrass you? And I believe me, I've spent time in a front office, so I've done it all. And I've had bosses, you have families, and they scream but they do it because you're all on the same page, because you all want to try and win. I love those examples where, and I've told this story to when again, I was in the front office of a couple of different organizations, and especially the last few years when you have to walk on these eggshells and anything you say can be used against you and will be, you'll be canceled. But man, I long for the days when you close the door in a meeting. And I'm telling you, man, years ago, I remember bringing, and I'm not necessarily proud of this, but bringing a cohort to tears. She happened to be female. She's a great friend of mine. And I'd have been gone, and scream back at me. But then when the door is opened, all of a sudden you're all in this together. Mm-hmm. It's like family. I'm one of 7 kids, and we scream. We physically punched each other. 6 boys, 1 girl. Believe me, we've had our nose bloodied by our own blood brothers. We had in our house in Harrisburg, we had literal holes in the walls where one brother's head was thrown through. One guy had 1 tooth out because one brother threw him up against the bedroom railing. I mean, but that's okay to do. But then once we went outside, like, don't you dare talk about the Browns.
Right.
We can talk about the Browns. You can't.
Right.
Sounds like we're talking about WCW here or something. What's going on, Greg?
Yeah, it was. I mean, those were the days, man. Those were the days when my mom just said, let them have it. They'll figure it out.
Yeah, hey, Rasheen and I get into it like that all the time. Somebody just told us we're like blood brothers instead of brothers on the podcast. We're always going at it.
Now the thing is, though, are you guys ever physically in the same place, or are you always remote?
Yeah, no, we get together. We do an on-location show once a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, then it counts. Okay. Because you can talk a big game, get the beer muscles if you're like remote. But
we have a lot of fun when we go on location. We have a cool place here in Frederick, Maryland called Frederick Social, and it's a really neat place. They have a big beer wall, and you can have whatever drink you want. You just put a card in the machine, and you pour it, and it adds up your total. You can have a different beer.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we have a nice space there, and they treat us really well. So it's our new home for our on-location show.
I was in Frederick, I don't know the arena, to see Phil Vassar, a country music singer, about 6 or 7 years ago.
Probably the Weinberg.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. And so fairly familiar. I grew up in D.C. in the Harrisburg area, so that area of the country is not too unfamiliar.
Right. We have the minor league baseball stadium here.
Yeah.
It used to be the Frederick Keys, and they are in limbo right now because Cal sold them. So they're supposed to come back here. If they don't come back to Frederick, they're redoing the whole stadium to get another affiliated team here. So we're very excited for that. Right now they have one of those draft league teams, which is fun. They pack the house for that.
That's nice, but the Frederick deserves a pro baseball team.
Yeah.
That's a pro baseball city, yeah.
I spoke to one of the guys from the Orioles, and he said once they get done the renovations, there's a big chance they'll be back. So
good.
We'll keep our fingers crossed.
Good.
We got sidetracked. T-Sizz, you're up, buddy.
Hey, Greg, you alluded to O'Neill Cruz heading out to center, and we're looking at this. I can't even pronounce his name. Falafel.
Isaiah Flav.
I don't know. But anyway, him being a utility player, is he going to be potentially taking over that shortstop spot, or where do you see him being productive for the team?
Well, the intention when they moved Cruz and they made that deal was to make IKF the starting shortstop. And I think that is still the intent, although, he's pretty much admitted, to be frank, that he's a better player as a utility guy. For me, just as a fan, I don't know that Isaiah Falefa is an everyday first baseman, shortstop. I mean, you're talking about 140, 50 games at shortstop. I don't know about that. So my hope is that he's kind of keeping a seat warm maybe for a guy like Leover Peguero, who was a top prospect. It was the first trade that Ben Cherington made in 2020. trading Starling Marte to the Arizona Diamondbacks for a pitcher named Brendan Malone and this young, athletic middle infielder, Leover Peguero. And he's had cups of coffee in the big leagues, but he's erratic at short, but he's very athletic. And I just wish somehow, some way he'd kind of find it. Nick Gonzalez can play a little shortstop, but I think it's almost similar to IKF in that, he's better suited for second. It's really kind of amazing because they've had either through the draft or through international signings, they've had a boatload of middle infielders and just have not had the fit yet at short. Now, again, they made this decision. It was going to be Cruz. Cruz wanted to play short. I don't know how, I didn't take a stance. When people ask me, do I think it was the right move? I still don't know the answer to that. We'll never know. I guess the true answer would Cruz have been a really solid all-star shortstop every day if he stayed there? Like I said, we'll never know. They felt like he's better off in the outfield where he can use his legs. Jim Leland, and most every managers feel this way too, but he said this time and time again, you have got to have in baseball a shortstop that when that routine ground ball is hit, especially late in games, when that ground ball is hit to shortstop, it has to be an out. And though Cruz was continuing to learn that position the last couple of years, almost every time, no, not almost, I'll say it, every time there was a ground ball towards shortstop, I kind of held my breath. And I think Pirate fans were the same, that once he fielded the ball, then you're going, okay, now what? So it's twofold. Did he get to the ball, field it cleanly, and his throws? And if I'm feeling that way and fans are feeling that way, they're feeling that way in the dugout and on the field, and you can't have that. So for that matter, that reasoning, I understand the move. Again, I'm just not necessarily sold on Kiner Falefa being your everyday shortstop.
He kind of gives me that, Cruz gave me that Pedro feel to him. Alvarez at third base. That's where I understand exactly what you meant. Exactly.
Yeah, he started to improve with it. He really did. In fact, what got really bizarre, like last year, and I kept looking at my broadcast partner, would be like, what is that? What's going on there? He couldn't keep the ball in his glove. I said, does he need a bigger glove? Throws from the catcher, drop. Pop-ups, drop. Like, what is happening? Relays from the outfield, he'd drop them. Like, what is going on? So that became more of an issue even than the throws. I'm glad that I will say that toward the end of the season, and I think it was the last month where they moved him to center field. I asked him toward the end of the year, okay, give me something that you like. I know he didn't want to go out there, but I said, give me something that you like about playing center field. And he just went, nope. I said, what? Nothing? He goes, nope. So you don't like anything about center field? Nope. So whatever happened this winter, maybe somebody did some talking to him, or maybe in reflecting on things, he's come in with a really great attitude about center field, and he's put shortstop behind him, which is critical that he doesn't, he's not shrugging his shoulders, and he's not shaking his head, and he's not walking off the field like, woe is me. He's now accepted center field as his position.
I think it's going to help his bat, to be honest with you.
It might. It very well could. I mean, he doesn't have to worry about those throws. And the thing about, not to label it, but it's true especially with Latin shortstops. It's just the way it is. First of all, they're all proud. The Dominicans, the Venezuelans, very proud of their homeland, and especially proud when they're shortstops. And so when there are others from countries, they want to prove to them and themselves that they are the best. And so I've seen that over the years when he was playing like against Ellie De La Cruz, for example, the Reds. You can almost see this show going on, a sideshow. And I think he got caught up in that. And I think that did affect the bat. Because if you make a mistake at short, you gotta forget about it and pick up the bat and play. So now he's less likely to make as many mistakes in center field. And I was really impressed how naturally he seemed to be in center field. He seemed to take to it. I mean, he made some really above average catches that nobody really paid attention to because he did it without breaking stride. His breaks on balls were kind of surprising, like for a guy that never played that position. And of course, he can make up for it with those gallops, those long legs. I think in the end, he's going to probably look back and go, this was the best thing for me.
Will they pay him? Can you hear me? Oh, we kind of lost you, Greg.
I think I lost your audio.
Yeah, we hear you. Can you hear us?
We can't see you.
Lost your audio, guys.
Huh. Let me take them out and put them back in.
Do a little song and dance while we figure that out.
Yeah.
Are Dream and Sizzle hearing you, Barber?
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I'll be darned. I didn't touch anything.
Your screen went dark on us.
I can like I said, I can try and do a little.
You want to leave
maybe
it?
I tell you, if anybody has a pad or pen, you could jot down just one word and show it to the camera, and I'll know what you're talking about. If that's the way to do the Q&A.
You want to leave?
I can
and
see
come
you
back?
laughing, but I don't know if you're laughing. Maybe you're just.
No, I'm
me.
laughing. You want to leave and come back?
Obviously, you can hear me, but I can't hear you. That's wild.
I can't even text him. I don't have his number. Let me. Huh.
I'll write it. I'm gonna write it.
I'm back.
Oh, you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
I think something triggered. I didn't touch anything, but something triggered it. So I don't know what. What were you going to write down, Dream? Will they sign Cruz?
Yeah, that's what I had. Long term.
Nobody knows that answer. Don't know. The Pirates get criticized. I want to say more than any other team in baseball. I don't know if that's true or not. I see national pundits taking shots at them. But I do think that just about every small revenue team hears it. In fact, I was at the ballpark today, and I had a 2-inning debate with 2 Pirate fans out near the left field bleachers. I was walking out to see a buddy of mine who had come in from out of town. And they stopped me and they started chatting. It was civil, but it was a debate about this whole thing that the Pirates don't sign anybody and the owner's cheap, blah, blah, blah. And I've told people, I feel like if anybody has a PhD in Pirates ownership, management, fan interaction, it might be Dr. Greg Brown. Because I was in the front office for 10 years. I'm an old guy. I'm old. So I go back to the Galbraith family. John Galbraith and Dan Galbraith owned the team back in the, I knew Dan better than John. John, the dad, bought the team back just after Barney Dreyfuss had it. So you're talking like in the 50s. And they owned it into the early 1980s. And I got to know the family. I still know the grandson, Squire's a friend of mine, his siblings. And they lived in Columbus, Ohio. And even though the Galbraith family brought Pittsburgh 3 World Series championships starting in 1960, another 1971, another 1979, I won't say they got run out of town because back then in the 70s into the 80s, a lot of the family-owned baseball teams were sold. The Bushes sold the Cardinals. The Carpenters sold the Phillies. You can just go. The Wrigley sold the Cubs, and the Galbraiths sold it. But they were never treated, I think, in their minds, or mine for that matter, as well as they should have been, because they were looked at by the public, and I think the media had most to do with it, as out-of-towners that didn't know what was going on in Pittsburgh, carpetbaggers. And it was so unfair. They'd bring 3 championships, and it still wasn't good enough because they were operating a team from Columbus, Ohio. And how can you know us? So it was very unfair. But that's kind of been the mindset of fans and media over the years. And I don't necessarily think it is unique to Pittsburgh. I believe it's just the way it's been in baseball over the many, many years, 150 plus years of Major League Baseball, that it just seems like the evil empire, the nemesis of every big league city is that team's owner. And it's been fractured between fans and owners, and media and owners, and it's especially true in Pittsburgh. So that's a long-winded answer to say, and to finish up by saying, I do believe that the owner of the Pirates has done within his means, which is taking whatever revenues he gets and spends it on the team. He showed that in 13, 14, 15. You can criticize him as you could criticize 99% of baseball owners, in that rarely, this Steve Cohen from the Mets is a rare example. He and Mike Ilitch of the Tigers, the late Mike Ilitch of the Detroit Tigers, spent money, I guess, out of their own pockets. Cohen, a billionaire, and he's a Mets fan. He's just spending, whatever it takes to win. But that's unique. I count 2 in 40 years. All the other owners, what they do is they take, what revenue they have and they spend it. And so that's what he's done. He's gone out and he has, in the last 2 years, signed long-term contracts with pitcher Mitch Keller, third baseman Ke'Bryan Hayes, outfielder Brian Reynolds. He did it before with Andrew McCutchen when McCutchen was here the first time. He extended him. He's done it on occasion with others. So I don't know whether Cruz will be on that list or not.
How about somebody like Jared Jones?
Would he sign him again? I think it's possible because he's done it in the past. He's done it with pitching. He's done it with, it's really up to, if you look at how these teams are run, the Pirates anyway, it would, in this case specifically, it's up to the general manager to go and pitch the owner. Like, we want to extend this 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the road. This is what we want to do. We need a commitment, therefore, from you on this. And then to sell the owner on why this makes sense. Jones, we think he's going to be in the rotation. Now, I'll play devil's advocate with you, Barber. Jones is slightly built for a hard-throwing right-hander.
Okay.
And so the question when he entered the big leagues last year, and even as he was coming up through the system, can he physically hold up over the years? Physically, because if you look at him, he is a max effort guy. Everything he has, he's thrown at that plate from first pitch to the last of every game. Now, he ended up on the injured list last year. Is that a sign? I don't know. I'm not saying, it could be a one-off, but these are the things that all these guys have to think about. Rumblings when Ke'Bryan Hayes was going to be extended. Early rumblings about a back issue, maybe, but that was dismissed. Well, lo and behold, what's happened over the last couple of years? Back issues. So if you take the owner's side in this case and you wonder, wait a minute, now you asked me, you gave me this big pitch, you told me I wanted this guy, and we're going to sign him along. Now he misses all these games because of a back issue. Now, hopefully, knock on wood somewhere, those days are gone for Hayes, and he's going to be healthy because you guys asked the question about the best offseason move. The best offseason move is a healthy, productive Ke'Bryan Hayes. That will be a difference maker. Back to Gold Glove defense, not hitting home runs, but driving in. He has the potential to drive in 75 to 80 runs, gap to gap, 30 doubles, getting on base, driving the ball all over the place. That's Ke'Bryan Hayes' game. So I hope that that's the case the rest of his contract. But you can understand an owner being leery and maybe suspect about, hey, wait a second, what about this, this, and this? That all comes into play when you're talking about extending anybody, and it's not just the Pirates, it's every team, depending on their budgets and how deep their pockets are, they all have to decide. And I'll give you an example of a team, even big market teams, that have to make these decisions. The Pirates got criticized, as they often do, for players either being traded or let go. Rarely, though, do they let the player go to free agency. So they try to get something back. Over the years, it's not been a ton of high-profile free agents, by the way, or players, stars, that they did let Bonds go. That was a previous owner. That was two owners back in the early 90s, by the way. They felt like they couldn't keep him, which was a terrible blunder, by the way, on those owners' parts. Bob Walk, my partner, says, how foolish were they back then? They signed me over Barry Bonds. And it ended up getting the general manager at the time fired. They ended up signing Walkie to a longer-term deal. But that's the kind of stuff that's been going on forever. And so they've done this. They have to make these decisions. Do we keep a guy? Do we let them go? And again, it happens over the years for all these owners, and not just the current one. And again, they get criticized. As I mentioned, not a ton of time, especially under this owner, have they let big name players go at the peak of their game through free agency or trade. The one guy that comes to mind was Garrett Cole. Cole and McCutchen were traded the same offseason. McCutchen's career, you take a look at it. And this is also something that drives me crazy with media, and I talk to the local guys in Pittsburgh about it all the time. An easy talk show line, subject. If you want to get that phone ringing, hey, I'm a talk show host, sports talk in Pittsburgh. Phones are dead. Let's talk Pirates. Pirates have a cheap owner, Bob Nutting. Brr, phone's ringing off the hook. Nutting's cheap, can't stand, never go to another Pirate game. Nutting. They let these guys go to free agent. Well, nobody goes back and relitigates these things, which when a player goes elsewhere and succeeds, that's all you hear about. A handful of times that happens. Look at these players that go, the trade of Tyler Glasnow goes down. When they signed Chris Archer, look at that, they let Glasnow go. Well, nobody talks about Shane Boss, who's been injured. The other pitcher that was in the Austin Meadows, God bless him, but Austin Meadows had a good year, and now he's had some physical and mental issues that have kept him off the field for 2 years. So again, nobody relitigates this stuff. Nobody goes back and talks about how, and again, not being critical of Andrew McCutchen, but if you look at his career, they traded him at the perfect time. I mean, give them credit for that. And they did trade Garrett Cole with 2 years left on the contract. You know where they traded him to? The Houston Astros. And after 2 years, even the Houston Astros couldn't afford to keep him. But nobody talks about that. So they talk about the cheap Pirates. Nobody says cheap Astros.
And the other Empire.
So that stuff drives me crazy because, again, I think it's easy to sit back and just throw up. And it takes a little work to look into this stuff. Look into why this current owner owns the Pirates. Do some work on that. The reason he owned, God bless the previous owner. We wouldn't be here without him because he got a consortium together of other investors. He helped build the new ballpark, but he was such a fan of the team. He insisted to the general manager that when we move into a new ballpark, we will sign this guy, Jason Kendall, to a long-term deal. Money the Pirates had never thought of before. Jason Kendall was his career a singles hitting, good average catcher, batting average wise. So they spent money there. They spent money on guys like Derek Bell and Pat Mears and money that they didn't really have. They end up losing 100 games the very first year at PNC Park. And in short order, this owner, great guy, big fan, insisting to sign all these players. All of a sudden, look at the books. Uh-oh, we're starting to bleed red ink here. We're in trouble. We're in really serious trouble. We need an infusion of cash. So he goes around and essentially, I'm simplifying this, he sends out an SOS to several of his investors. And he says, we need money fast. And one family steps up. And it's Bob Nutting, Ogden Nutting, his dad, and Bob Nutting. And they infuse this capital that's necessary. And eventually they start adding and they buy out the previous owner. And again, I'm simplifying things, but you could, to an uneducated guy with me when it comes to finances, pretty much what happens, he says to the previous owner and anybody that will listen, I'll buy this team from you, but I will never run it like this again. I'm going to run it like a business. I've had successful business in the past, and I don't know anything about baseball, but I know one thing, I'm not going to let this team go under. I'm not going to let this team move to another city because I wasn't smart financially. And now he gets criticized for it, and it looks bad because he doesn't spend all this money that he doesn't have, or some people think he has and he could, spend his own pocket money, which again, I go back to the idea that no owner does that, very few. And again, you could criticize him for being a good, perhaps frugal, maybe too strong a word, businessman, but he's got the Pirates on solid ground. I mean, it's not going. Pirates aren't going anywhere.
So let me ask you. I know we're a little off here, but he knows nothing about baseball. You take a look at the new owner of the Washington Commanders. He knows nothing about football. He brings people in to help him win that team, and they did pretty successful this year. Why won't Notting take that step in that process to say, hey, I'm going to bring people in, help me recruit, help me get some players. Let's move this in the right direction. You're talking about blue-collar workers. Yeah, that's going to motivate us and keep us coming out to the ballpark for so long. But after a while, with 100 losing games every season, it's hard to be a fit.
Two things, Sizzle. They've not lost 100 games every season. That's rare.
I know.
Well, but that's important because I go back to the narrative. I'm serious because what I've said to the owner is it's the drip of misinformation. It might be too strong a word to say lies. I'm not suggesting this is a lie. It's misinformation, information that comes in from all areas, social media, radio stations, TV stations, bloggers, constantly all over the place that have this in the back of people's minds about the cheap Pirates and they're terrible, everything else. So I do think it's important that we point out that 100 losses. They have lost 100 games, but they don't do it every year. They won only 76 games last year. I'm not saying that's enough. It's not enough. It's far from it. But to your point about Snyder and the Commanders, you're 100% right. Now I'll caution, having spent time in the NFL with the Bills and been around pro sports my entire life. Watch about repeat. We'll see what happens next year. Everybody, all the Commander fans are feeling real good about themselves right now, but brace yourselves. I'm not suggesting there's going to be a fall off, but
they brought in a new owner, Josh.
I understand that, but all of a sudden it's not some magical elixir that all of a sudden it's all going to be well and good for the next handful of years because they got a new owner. It was a good first year. We'll see if they repeat. I'm just saying. But back to the point about bringing in people that are in the know. That's exactly what this owner has done. He doesn't know baseball, so he says, I need people that know baseball. And he relies on them. And that's why when people say he doesn't care about winning, again, it's the drip of misinformation when it comes to the Pittsburgh Pirates. If he doesn't care about winning, I ask Pirate fans this all the time because I hear it all the time on the talk shows, everything else, and fans. All he cares about is money. He could care less if they win. Okay, if all he cares about is money and doesn't care if they win, then answer me this very important question. After the 2019 season, he fires the president, the GM, the manager, and two critical people in the scouting and minor league departments. to the tune of about $20 million still left on their contracts, still paying them for 2 and 3 years down the road. If he doesn't care about winning, why would you fire these guys and throw that money away?
Hey,
Great point.
we can say that's better.
Greg, do you think we're aligning for a lockout in 2027?
Boy, I don't know. I don't know. The rumblings are not good. Reading what Tony Clark says, what about Rob Manfred says, it's been talked about since '94 when the strike hit. But when that happened, when the country was without baseball for 2 months that year, 1994, and no postseason or World Series, I mean, it hurt a nation. There's something very special about the game of baseball. It's a friend that comes along with you every day in the spring and summer and fall. It's a companion. It's something that people rely on. As critical as people have been about the sport, and people take shots at it, it's still a big time revenue sport. It's still incredibly popular around the world. And when that happened, when the strike cost the postseason, the people that ran baseball vowed to never let it happen again. And so we've had some lockouts. The last contract in 2021, the delay of the season, but they restructured it to get all the games in. I don't know. It would probably cost. I don't know if it would cost an entire season, but it would be costly in terms of games if they decide to do it. And I don't know if the owners have it in them. Can they stomach it? I don't know.
I just asked that because I see contracts that are over the top with the Dodgers, and then I see some guys that are getting modest contracts that probably should be paid better. And I'm wondering if some of these owners, Bob Nutting being one of them, is forecasting what he's going to see in 2027.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you've heard some rumblings. These guys are very smart in that they, I think that they make certain that they get fined. I guess this is the reason. They get fined substantially, these small market owners and big market owners for that matter, when they talk about things like we need a lockout, we need a salary cap. You don't hear that from any of them. They're all uniform and not saying anything. And now internally, are the small market teams getting together and saying we've got to do something about it? The problem is I've heard this over and over again, and they never have the gut. Not guts is not right, but they can't stomach it. They don't want. It's too costly, I guess, financially to sacrifice a whole season. But if I'm a small market team and I take the gruff that Bob Nutting, I'd certainly think long and hard about it. I've had discussions with players over the years. I've had those that have been retired, those that have been in the union, those that have been out of the union, current players about, don't you see that the union essentially is for the big name players, the big market guys, the handful of superstars? Yeah, they certainly don't want a salary cap because they get rewarded. But it's the middle of the road, the average guy, the vast majority that it costs them more, because if there were a salary cap, they'd make more. But it just never seems to gain traction. And it's the greatest union in the history of mankind. That's not an exaggeration. If you're a pro-union guy or girl, it is the greatest union in the history of mankind, bar none. And it was born in Pittsburgh because Marvin Miller was an attorney for U.S. Steel in Pittsburgh, and he was the first player representative, the first executive director of the Players Association. He created it. And Pittsburgh, it's so funny because Pittsburgh's like a union town, and they get down on all this stuff. Well, wait a minute. Can you have it both ways? Because if you're a union guy, you got to love the Major League Baseball Players Association. There's nothing like it. It's unbelievable.
That's so interesting about Marvin Miller. I remember him. I'm almost 60, so I definitely remember.
Don't whine about age to this guy, please.
Hey, final question for you, my friend. And I'm going to let you get about your wonderful evening. In late September, where are Pittsburgh Pirates going to be sitting?
In late September, they're going to be sitting within striking distance, if not in one of the wild card slots. I don't know what the record will be, but there's too much riding on the line. The bullseye is on the backs of the manager and the GM. They know it. It's too important for them, and I think they'll pull out all the stops. I also think that come late July, just approaching that deadline, they'll be within a handful of games to the point where Ben Cherington knows, I'm going to add, they'll bring guys in, they'll do what they have to do, they'll add to the payroll like they've done previously in 13, 14, 15. They've got permission to do that. They've boosted the payroll. And so, I just think, and the other thing too, I've been saying to Pirate fans, Barber, is the luck has to change. They've had some bad luck over the years, and baseball is one of the luckiest sports of all. That's why they play so many of them. They play 162 games to even things out because there's so much luck, the way the ball bounces and things happen. The luck is due to change for the Pirates in addition to everything else. Talent wins out more than anything else, but also I think they need a little luck on their side.
Greg, you got me fired up for baseball now.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
I'm
fired up.
My question, I thought I was going to get the Brown beat down like back in the day with your brothers.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us.
Sizzle, by the way, I just want to add this. You're talking to a guy who was born in Washington, D.C., and whose family, all my older brothers were all Redskin fans, and to this day they watch the. Now I grew up a Bears fan for some crazy reason. That's another story. But they're all still Washington Skins, whatever you call their name.
We still call them Skins.
Okay, they're all still Skins fans, and I root for them too. Believe me, I'm not rooting against them by any stretch, but I'm just saying that having been there and done that it is hard to win in sports, and it's a great story that the new owner comes in and what happened. It's like a Cinderella story. But now I'm anxious to watch and see if Washington can maintain what we know sports is cyclical.
We're just waiting for our Buckeyes to come back around. We're hopeful, and you got us fired up. I'm ready to watch some spring ball. I can't wait for the season to start.
Keep the faith. I keep telling Bucko fans, keep the faith.
Yes.
Got my Bucko shirt on. Hey, we'll look you up when we come to the stadium, Greg. Have a great rest of your time at spring training, and keep doing your thing. You're wonderful to listen to.
Thanks a million for saying that. Dream, Sizzle, Barber, thanks, man. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me on. Okay.
That was pretty cool. He really brought some. He really got me kind of fired up. He really shared amazing stuff with us that you got to listen. If you're a Pirate fan, you got to listen to this show and hear what he had to say, because I feel like he gave us some really deep insight on a lot of things. He painted a different picture of Bob Nutting for us.
My follow-up question to that was, okay, why did they cut those guys at the end of last year, right before they were getting ready to get their signing, that bonus?
Yeah.
If he's so worried about winning and not the money, why did he cut them right before the money? But I wasn't going to get into that. And that wasn't my original question. My original question was about AI being used this spring training to help call balls and strikes.
I love that. I love it, Terry. I think it's great. I've seen it used in the minor leagues. I've been at games. I watched it over here, the draft league last year, and I think it's great. It really helps. It really helps some of those guys when you have just really bad umpires, because some of those guys are not very good.
Yeah.
So fellas, thanks for joining me on this show. Great to see T Sizz back. He's had a lot going on in his life, but Hopefully he's back on with us on a regular basis. We're going to drag his butt to Terrible Talk when he has some time for that too. So it's awesome to have him back with us. Don't forget to reach out to the Original Sports Podcast. You can check out our webpage, originalsportspodcast.com. We're on every social media you can imagine. We're either Original Sports Podcast or OSP with MM. Don't forget to watch our Terrible Talk on Thursday nights as well as on Sunday nights if you miss Thursday on Roku, National Streaming Sports. For me, The Dream, Sheen, and T Sizzle, thanks for joining us tonight, and have a great evening, everybody.